Have you ever wondered whether your dog sees the world the same way you do? Or whether a hummingbird's vision reaches so far beyond human perception that it almost opens onto a different reality? At first glance, these questions may seem like simple curiosity. Yet their answers reveal something deeper. What we call seeing is far more limited and subjective than we tend to assume. In nature, some animals can distinguish colors, patterns, and forms of light that the human eye can never perceive. This is no coincidence. It is the result of highly complex biological mechanisms shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure. Now, we step into this extraordinary visual world that pushes the boundaries of perception and begin to explore why the colors we see represent only a small fraction of what truly exists. At this point, we are faced with a fundamental question. If nature contains such a wide and rich diversity of ways of seeing, where does the human eye stand within this spectrum? The way humans perceive the world is not a universal standard, but a species-specific solution shaped by clear biological limits. How we see colors, what we can distinguish, and what we completely miss are directly linked to the cellular structure of our eyes. For this reason, to understand the worlds animals see, we must first understand our own visual system. Without grasping the limits of human vision, it is impossible to fully comprehend the extraordinary differences in perception found in nature. That is why we must begin by examining how the human eye works. The way the human eye perceives the world is often treated as an absolute reality. Yet the colors and brightness we see represent only a small fraction of the visual information nature provides. What we call vision is not reality in its entirety, but a form of perception specific to humans. At the core of this perception lies the retina at the back of the eye. The cone cells responsible for color vision are divided into three main types and are roughly sensitive to wavelengths close to red, green, and blue. The brain combines information from these three sources to create a colorful world. Our ability to distinguish millions of shades is the result of this system. However, the human eye has only three color channels. This fundamentally limits the range of colors we can perceive. The visible light spectrum is a very narrow portion of electromagnetic radiation. Ultraviolet and infrared light are naturally invisible to us. Vision is not only about color. Rod cells, which become active in low-light conditions, enhance detail perception, but do not carry color information. This is why our night vision is sharp yet colorless. The brain processes brightness and color separately, and when these two streams combine, the experience of vision emerges. This structure leads to a common misconception, the belief that what we see represents the whole of reality. In fact, colors are not direct properties of objects. They are perceptions produced jointly by the eye and the brain. The human eye is not deficient, but specialized. Evolution has filtered out colors that were unnecessary for humans, while emphasizing abilities such as fine detail perception and facial recognition. This shows that other living beings may inhabit visual worlds very different from our own. Understanding the limits of human vision is the first step toward understanding why animals can perceive a world we cannot see. Our ability to see color is rooted in a biological architecture far deeper than the external structure of the eye. At the center of this architecture are photoreceptor cells located in the retina, which convert light into neural signals. What truly determines how a living being sees the world is the type, number, and diversity of responses of these cells to light. Photoreceptors are divided into two main groups: rod cells and cone cells. These two cell types evolved to function under different environmental conditions. Rod cells are extremely sensitive in low-light environments. They allow us to perceive shapes, movement, and contrast in dim conditions. However, this sensitivity comes at a cost. Rod cells do not carry color information. This is why our night vision is detailed but colorless. Cone cells, on the other hand, operate under bright light conditions and form the basis of color perception. These cells are sensitive to specific wavelengths of light. In the human eye, 3 different types of cone cells respond to different wavelength ranges. The brain combines these responses to create the experience of color. However, which colors can be perceived is limited by the biochemical structure of these cells. This limitation is not accidental. Photoreceptor cells respond to specific types of light through opsin proteins they contain. As opsin diversity increases, the range of colors that can be perceived also expands. In the human eye, this diversity is limited, which is why we can perceive only a narrow portion of the visible light spectrum. Here, an important evolutionary reality emerges. Photoreceptor architecture offers a different solution for each species. In nocturnal species, rod cells dominate, while in species active during daylight and reliant on color-based signals, cone cells become more prominent. This distribution is shaped by environmental demands. Moreover, having more photoreceptors does not always mean seeing better. Some animals can perceive many colors, but process visual information more coarsely. Others, despite seeing fewer colors, can make extremely precise comparisons. This is because visual perception is completed not only by the eye, but by the brain. Without understanding this cellular architecture, it is impossible to grasp why some animals possess a color world far richer than that of humans. The issue is not an extra ability, but an entirely different biological design. Nature builds a unique visual system for each species. There is no universal standard of vision. From this point onward, it becomes meaningful to discuss how some living beings can possess visual worlds that extend far beyond human perception. When it comes to visual systems in nature, some creatures do not merely push the limits of perception, they redraw them entirely. One such example is the mantis shrimp, which at first glance appears to be an ordinary marine crustacean. From the perspective of visual perception, however, This animal inhabits a visual world completely unlike anything familiar to humans. What makes the mantis shrimp so extraordinary is the diversity of opsin proteins found in its retina. While human color vision relies on three main types of opsins, the mantis shrimp may possess between 12 and 16. At first glance, this might suggest a simple conclusion. More opsins mean better color vision. In reality, the situation is far more complex. Opsins determine which wavelengths of light photoreceptor cells respond to. In the mantis shrimp, this diversity creates a perceptual range that extends beyond visible light. However, the way this information is processed differs from the human brain. Humans distinguish colors by comparing them, whereas the mantis shrimp relies on a system based on rapid recognition and classification. Rather than finely analyzing colors, it perceives them as instantly recognizable visual signals. Another remarkable feature of this visual system is the ability to detect polarized light. Polarized light is completely invisible to the human eye, yet underwater reflections, surfaces, and biological tissues carry rich information in this form. By detecting these signals, the mantis shrimp can interpret its environment in far greater detail, perceiving movement, orientation, and surface reflections with a sensitivity beyond human capability. This perceptual ability is not simply about seeing more, it directly serves survival. The mantis shrimp is an exceptionally fast and effective predator. Its visual system processes environmental cues at extraordinary speed, allowing it to determine the position and movement of its prey in fractions of a second. Here, a critical point emerges. The visual system of the mantis shrimp is not more advanced than that of humans. It is different. It has evolved to meet the demands of an underwater environment that requires rapid decision-making, detection of sudden movements, and navigation through complex lighting conditions. This form of perception is not a universal superiority, but a highly specialized solution. This example clearly shows that there is no single ideal form of visual perception. Nature designs a visual system suited to the needs of each species. While the mantis shrimp represents the extreme edge of perception, it also reminds us of a fundamental truth. Seeing is shaped not only by eyes, but by needs. The human eye perceives the world within the narrow limits of visible light. In nature, however, this limit does not apply to many living beings. Birds, and some reptiles in particular, possess visual systems capable of seeing ultraviolet light, something entirely beyond human perception. This ability fundamentally alters their relationship with their environment and reveals a visual layer we cannot perceive. Ultraviolet vision is not a random evolutionary privilege. It provides highly concrete advantages for birds and reptiles. Plant surfaces, animal tissues, and natural reflections carry rich information in ultraviolet wavelengths. Humans are blind to all of this. But for these animals, the environment becomes a far more layered visual map. This advantage is most clearly seen in food selection. As many fruits ripen, they reflect ultraviolet light in different ways. Two fruits that appear almost identical to the human eye may send entirely different signals to birds. As a result, nutritious or safe food can be identified much more quickly and accurately, offering a direct survival advantage. Ultraviolet vision is not limited to food. Many patterns found on bird feathers and on the skin or scales of reptiles appear plain or monochromatic to human eyes. To an eye capable of perceiving ultraviolet light, however, these surfaces are filled with complex patterns and signals. These hidden patterns play an important role in communication within a species. Information related to mate selection, social status, and genetic suitability is transmitted through this invisible layer. Here, an important truth emerges. Many creatures that appear simple to the human eye are, in fact, visually rich. A large portion of the colors and patterns found in nature lies outside human perception. Ultraviolet vision is one of the keys to this hidden richness. Another critical function of ultraviolet perception is avoiding danger. Some birds and reptiles can detect potential threats earlier through ultraviolet reflections. Patterns that provide camouflage from certain angles can enhance threat detection from others. This is one of nature's highly effective defensive strategies. However, a crucial point must be emphasized. Ultraviolet vision does not make birds or reptiles superior creatures. It is a specialized evolutionary response to the environments in which they live. What is unnecessary for humans may be vital for these species. The example of birds and reptiles clearly shows that visual perception cannot be reduced to a single reality. In nature, each species sees its own world. These worlds may overlap, but they are never identical. The ultraviolet world is a silent layer of nature, constantly present, yet invisible to humans. In nature, colors are not merely an aesthetic detail. For some living beings, colors function as guiding signals and maps that make survival possible. Butterflies and bees are among the creatures that use this invisible visual language most intensively. A flower that appears simple to the human eye possesses an extremely detailed and directive structure in their perception. Many flower species display special patterns that emerge under ultraviolet light. These patterns, invisible to humans, are clear and unmistakable to butterflies and bees. Lines leading toward the center of the flower, rings or contrasting spots, function much like road signs. These patterns are not random. They have been shaped through evolution to maximize pollination efficiency. The primary function of these invisible patterns is guiding pollinators to nectar. When a bee or butterfly approaches a flower, it can quickly identify the exact location of nectar through these signals. This saves time and energy. In nature, every unnecessary movement while searching for food reduces the chances of survival. Ultraviolet patterns serve as visual shortcuts that minimize this risk. However, this perceptual system is not limited to flowers alone. Bees and some butterfly species can navigate by detecting polarized light. Polarization patterns in the sky, imperceptible to the human eye, make orientation possible even when the sun is hidden. Thanks to this ability, bees can move through vast areas without losing their way. This navigational skill also plays a critical role in colony life. When a bee finds a food source, this information is not transmitted as a direct visual map. Instead, visual perception, movement, and environmental cues combine to shape the collective behavior of the colony. Communication here does not rely on a single signal, but on the integration of perception and motion. At this point, a striking reality emerges. Butterflies and bees do not choose flowers because they are beautiful, but because they are readable. Flowers, in turn, adapt to this perception, making themselves more visible and attractive to these creatures. The result is a complex evolutionary partnership in which both sides benefit. These invisible maps, missed by the human eye, form one of nature's silent yet highly effective communication networks. Butterflies and bees are able to read this network. In their world, colors are not merely images, but sources of direction, meaning, and decision-making. In nature, color is not merely a visual feature. It is often vital information that determines the difference between life and death. A creature's ability to accurately perceive the colors in its environment directly affects many critical processes, from hunting success and food selection to the detection of danger. For this reason, color perception is not an aesthetic detail from an evolutionary perspective, but one of the fundamental tools of survival. For many predators, one of the greatest challenges is detecting prey that has blended into its surroundings. Camouflage is an extremely common defensive strategy in nature. Through colors and patterns, living beings can become nearly invisible within their environments. However, some animals with advanced color perception are able to overcome this camouflage. A surface that appears uniform to the human eye may contain irregularities and clues for an eye capable of perceiving different wavelengths. This difference can determine the line between a successful hunt and starvation. Another critical role of color in survival is warning signals. In nature, bright and striking colors are often not an invitation, but a warning. Poisonous or well-defended species advertise these traits through color. Predators learn to recognize these signals, and a wrong prey choice can have serious consequences. Therefore, a perceptual system capable of correctly interpreting color provides a direct survival advantage. Color perception is also decisive in the process of searching for food. The difference between a ripe, nutrient-rich fruit and one that is unripe or harmful is often expressed through color tones. Some animals can distinguish these differences with remarkable precision. This allows them to select the right food quickly and minimize energy loss. In nature, time and energy are among the most valuable resources for survival. The cost of incorrect choices is high. A wrong prey, a wrong food source, or a wrong target often leads to irreversible consequences. In the course of evolution, individuals unable to correctly read color signals are eliminated, while those that perceive them accurately survive. This explains why color perception is so sensitive and specialized in many species. Color perception not only enables hunting, but also makes it possible to avoid danger. Some animals can detect potential threats earlier through changes in color and contrast. This early warning provides the time needed to escape. In nature, a difference of just a few seconds can draw the boundary between life and death. In conclusion, color perception is not a neutral trait in nature. Every form of perception is a solution developed in response to specific risks and needs. In hunting, food foraging, and survival processes, color functions as a silent yet highly effective carrier of information. In nature, color is not merely seen, it is evaluated. And this evaluation is one of the most fundamental mechanisms determining whether a living being survives or not. In nature, color does not serve survival alone. It also acts as a powerful filter that determines which traits are carried into the future. It is not enough for a living being to survive. Its genes must also be passed on. At this point, color becomes a biological messenger and takes its place at the center of sexual selection. In many animal species, mate choice occurs through visual signals. The brightness of feathers, the order of patterns, or the saturation of colors convey information about an individual's health, genetic suitability, and resilience to environmental stress. These signals are not verbal, yet they are unmistakably clear to an eye capable of perceiving them. Here, color is not decoration, but a biological statement. A significant portion of these visual messages exists in wavelengths beyond human perception. Ultraviolet reflections play a decisive role in mate selection for some species. A feather or patch of skin that appears monochromatic to humans may be richly patterned and information-dense to a creature with ultraviolet vision. This makes communication within a species more reliable, as the signal can be read only by individuals with the appropriate sensory system. The messages carried by color are not limited to attractiveness. In many species, colors also indicate social hierarchy. More dominant individuals may display more distinct and consistent color patterns. These visual cues reduce direct conflict and help maintain group order. In this way, color moves beyond an individual trait and becomes a factor of social balance. The reason color signals are so effective in sexual selection is that they are difficult to fake. Unhealthy or genetically disadvantaged individuals cannot sustain such visual signals over time. This makes color a reliable criterion for selection. Over evolutionary time, individuals capable of correctly interpreting these signals gain an advantage. These visual messages, missed by the human eye, form a large part of communication among animals. A scene that appears simple to us contains an intense flow of information in their world. Colors are not only seen, but read, evaluated, and used to make decisions. Here, an important distinction emerges. In the context of survival, color functions as a warning or a tool. In the context of sexual selection, it becomes an investment in the future. This invisible language which determines whose genes will be passed on, shapes the evolutionary direction of species. In conclusion, color perception regulates not only the understanding of the environment, but also social relationships and genetic continuity. Invisible colors are a silent yet remarkably powerful social force in nature. For animals, this world is a field of communication filled with choices, preferences, and future generations. In nature, colors do not carry the same meaning for everyone. The world a living being sees is shaped by its needs, risks, and goals. The human eye has been specialized to fit its own way of life. This does not make it deficient, but limited. Yet these limits do not erase the fact that other creatures in nature may inhabit entirely different visual worlds. The colors perceived by animals form a silent language that makes hunting, navigation, communication, and reproduction possible. Humans see only a small portion of this language. The rest continues to exist in nature, unnoticed. Seeing, as it turns out, is not merely about the eyes. Seeing is the visual expression of how a living being relates to the world.